Samantha Marie Design's Poppy Bloomers. The Poppy Bloomers is actually a knit pattern, beginner friendly, and sizes newborn to 5T. This pattern has the option to be high-waisted, regular waisted, adding ruffles, or a skirt. So I went ahead and only printed the size that I needed. If you want to see how to do this, go back and check out my pattern printing hack video. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm only going to cut off the bottom at the dotted line so that it's easier to assemble and glue my pattern together. After I have my pattern all assembled, now we're just going to cut the pattern out. Depending on which version of the pattern you are doing, you should have either 2 or 4 pattern pieces. So I just have my front and back bloomers. We are going to do the high-waisted version. You will also need elastic for your waistband and for both of your legs. Since this is a knit pattern, I'm going to be using a double brush poly for mine. The elastic you'll need for the waistband is a 1/2 inch, and the elastic for the legs is going to be 5/8 inch. Next, I'm going to lay my fabric out and figure out which direction has the most stretch, since we want the most stretch to be what's wrapping around the body. After we have that figured out, I'm going to lay my fabric out, and as you can see, the most stretch is going in this direction. So now we're going to fold our fabric over just enough so that when we lay our pattern piece on that fold, it fits nicely onto the fabric. And then we're going to cut around that entire pattern piece, laying it on the fold. So while we watch me cut this, let me know down in the comments, do you guys prefer the full length videos of me showing the beginning to end, cutting out the pattern in every single step, or do you prefer the shorter videos? After we do our first piece, now I'm going to refold my fabric and we're going to cut out the second piece the exact same way. So in total, you should have a front and back of your bloomers, your waist elastic, and your leg elastic. There will be a cut chart in the pattern directions to let you know what lengths to cut these at. So now we're going to take our back bodice, we're going to lay this out right sides facing up, and then we're going to take our front and lay that right sides facing down, right on top, lining up our crotch and our side seams. Then we're just going to take pins or clips and just clip and pin this at the sides and at the crotch to hold our fabrics together. While we watch me pin this together, let me know down in the comments what is another pattern that you really want to see a tutorial for. Our next step is going to be to sew down both side seams and the crotch. So I'm going to start with my side seams. I'm going to start at the waist and then I'm just going to serge down both sides. After both sides are done, now we're going to serge the crotch closed. Now we're going to finish the waist edges at the top here. And what I mean by that is we're going to set all of our dials to 0, and then we're just going to serge around those raw edges at the waist. After you do that, this is what it should look like. So now we're going to fold that top edge down 2 inches and we're going to pin this closed all the way around. After we've pinned our 2 inches all the way around, now we're going to measure 1 inch from the top of the folded edge and we're going to put a pin there as well because we are creating a casing for our elastic. Remember that you will need to leave a hole here on both lines of stitches so that we can feed our elastic through. So as I do this, I am using the lines on my sewing machine as a guide to make sure I sew a straight line. So I'm going to use my sewing machine for this, and I am using my longest straight stitch setting, and we're going to stitch all the way around, remembering to leave an opening for our elastic to go through. Now we're going to do the same thing with our second row. Remember that we are creating a casing for our elastic, so if for some reason you have to use a different size elastic, you just want this to be able to fit through there, so make sure that you're sewing your straight lines very straight. Now what I'm going to do is take my waist elastic, give it a few stretches, and then we're going to take a safety pin and pin that to this end of our elastic. And then on the other end of our elastic, we're going to put either another pin or a clip here. With our safety pin end, we are going to slide that into our casing, and you want to make sure as you're doing this that your elastic does not get twisted. And you're just gonna push this in and do like a push and pull method. So just push your elastic through and then pull the fabric back on it, and do this around your entire waistband until you come out the other side. Once you finally make it to the other side, you're going to pull your elastic through and just kind of adjust your waist so that less of the elastic is hanging out on both ends, but be sure that you don't accidentally pull any of the sides of elastic inside that waistband, because it's really hard to get out once it gets sucked inside there. Once we have this all situated, you can take off your safety pin and your clip, because now we're going to sew the elastic together. So you're going to take both ends of elastic and overlap those about 1/2 inch. I usually put a pin in here to keep them together, and then we are going to use our widest zigzag stitch setting to close this. So I'm just going to slide my elastic under my presser foot. I'm going to sew and backstitch a few stitches with my pin in there, and then I'll slide my pin out and just continue my zigzag stitches. So after I finish this, I'll just trim my threads, and I take a lighter and just burn down the little excess threads. You don't have to do this, it's just something I do when I'm finishing my threads. Once our elastic is inside, now we need to close the hole on both rows of stitches. So I'm switching back to my straight stitch, and I'm going to use that to close both lines of stitches on my bloomers. Remember that you have 2 rows of stitches and you need to close both of those. Trim down your excess threads, and then again I use a lighter just to burn down the little edges. And then I'm going to go through and adjust my waistband, just check it out and make sure everything looks okay. If everything looks good, now it's going to be time to do both of your leg holes. So just like our waistband, we need to finish those raw edges. So we're going to slide this on our serger, and we're just going to stitch along the raw edges on both leg holes. Then we're going to repeat this on the other leg. Now that this is finished, we are going to fold the edge of our leg band in at 5/8 of an inch, and we're going to pin all the way around, and this is going to be for our leg elastic casing. After you do one side, go ahead and do your other side. And now, just like we did with our waistband, we are going to stitch closed the hem we created, leaving a small opening for your elastic to go through. After you're finished with both sides, now we're going to take our elastic just like we did with our waistband, place a safety pin on one end, and we're going to feed it through the casing we created. Now we're going to take both ends of elastic and overlap them about 1/2 inch, pin those together, and then we're going to close this with our zigzag stitch as well. After your elastic is sewn together, we're going to stick that inside our casing. We're going to straighten this out a little bit, and now we're going to close the hole that we fed our elastic through. So whichever stitch you used when you originally sewed your elastic casing, you want to use that same stitch to close it. And then after that, we're just going to straighten this out, and we're going to repeat that on our other leg band. After that, you're all finished, and this is what the final product looks like.